Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Number to call if you want to join the conversation, join the program is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Just one quick item of clarification. There's another organization that we work with called World Concern. And I want to be sure you understand that World Concern is not World Vision. World Vision is the organization that sold out on the issue of a sodomy-based marriage. They said, it's fine with us. You're in a sodomy-based marriage. You can work for us. We got no problem with that whatsoever. So they completely compromised biblical principle. Now, this was announced on Monday in their hiring policies. Now, World Concern is a different organization. We work with them. We are a ministry partner with World Concern. So the bottom line, World Concern is good. World Vision is bad, if you want a simple way to remember the difference between the two. 888-589-8840. Now, going back to this Joy Reid, Lori Wyndham clip, Joy Reid is bringing up this business about minimum wage laws, bringing about this business about hiring women in the workplace. And what about that? What about that, she says? Well, the first response to that question is, why in the world is any of that the government's business? What business does the federal government have in telling employers how much they have to pay their employees, or telling them who they have to hire, giving them some kind of gender assignment, gender diversity, gender quota? None of the government's business. Government has no right, has no authority, according to the Constitution, to be involved in any of that. I mean, minimum wage laws, in my mind, have no moral foundation. It interferes with the freedom. What we want to protect in America is the freedom for an employee to negotiate the best possible wage he can get with his employer. We don't want government interfering with that negotiation, with that decision process whatsoever. And trust me, that's best for the worker, because if a worker is developing his skills, the more valuable he becomes as a worker, then the more valuable he becomes to competitors. And so if his original employer is going to hang on to him, he may have to be prepared to increase his wages, or he will lose him to a competitor. We want to get the government out of all of that because we believe in freedom and liberty. We want employees to be able to strike the best possible deal they can with their employers. We don't want unions. We don't want the government interfering with that freedom whatsoever. And again, it's just this absurd thing about the government's extending waivers and waiving mandates and dropping mandates all over the fruited plain for everything. Why won't they on this one, particularly when this is an issue of religious liberty? Now, President Obama is going to be talking with Pope Francis tomorrow. This is clip number 2, Emily, if we can get that ready. And Rand Paul had this suggestion to President Obama about what he ought to talk to Pope Francis about tomorrow. Let's listen.
He ought to explain to the Pope why he is telling businesses in America they can't remain true to their faith and stay in business. The Hobby Lobby case is being discussed today, and I think it's important that he tell the leader of the Catholic Church why he thinks that businesses owned by Catholics can't make their own decisions with regard to health care.
The Vatican's Chief Justice feels that President Obama's policies have been hostile towards Christians. Do you believe that?
Yeah, and I think this is something that really should be discussed in our country. Most of us, whether you're Republican or Democrat, believe in freedom of speech. We also believe in free exercise of your religion. But if they're telling you that your tax dollars have to go to something you find morally reprehensible, I think that's not free exercise of religion.
So that's Rand Paul clearly coming down on the side of religion and suggesting to President Obama, hey, you want to talk to Pope Francis tomorrow, why don't you explain to him why Catholics are not free to run their businesses according to Catholic doctrine, according to their own deeply held moral principles? Why don't you have that conversation with the Pope? All right, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Linda, McLeod, Oklahoma. Linda, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi, I just had a comment to make.
Yes, ma'am.
It usually says 3 strikes, you're out, right? Well, the Supreme Court has 2, Roe v. Wade, Obamacare.
Well, that's right. So so you're saying maybe
kick them out as they mess up?
there's an opportunity for them to redeem themselves before we have to send them to the bullpen.
There you go.
Well, and it's interesting, Linda, the stuff I've read, again, you never know. It's hard to read the tea leaves, but, You know, the attorneys for the free exercise of religion, the attorneys that were arguing the sanctity of life position in court yesterday, generally speaking, they were pretty optimistic coming out of that, out of oral arguments based on the questions that the justices were asking. Now, the three female justices, they're gone because to them, this is all about sexism and genderism and all that kind of stuff. So they're gone. They're not making their decision based on the Constitution. They're making the decision based purely and entirely on emotion. So you can forget them. They're gone. So they're going to rule against Hobby Lobby. You can count on that. But Justice Breyer, interestingly enough, who's a liberal guy, he seemed to be asking questions that might indicate he may actually tilt toward the side of religious liberty, the side of the sanctity of life. John Roberts, the way he interjected himself into the proceedings. And I'll tell you, one of the things with John Roberts, that guy's got something to atone for, and I think maybe he knows
I
it.
was just going to say that.
Yeah. Well, you know, are you seeing it the same way I am, Linda? I mean, I think he's got something to atone for because the only reason we've got Obamacare is because of him.
I don't understand. How can he change it and then okay it?
I know it. It's crazy. You know, and I'll tell you frankly, all of his credibility as a jurist, I thought very highly of him until that ruling on Obamacare, and then I lost all of my regard for him as a jurist. I mean, I'm sure he's a fine man and a nice father and a good husband, and I'm sure I'd have plenty of respect for him as a human being, but as a judge, I have no regard for him any longer because he sold out every constitutional principle that he claimed to defend in order to find a way to uphold that law. He actually had to rewrite it, you know, and call
how can he do that?
call it a tax instead of a penalty. He had to rewrite it and then say it's okay. So I don't know. I just and I wonder maybe, Linda, he's looking at the chaos that's resulted. I mean, this thing is an absolute disaster. You know, I mean, they said over and over, March 31st, that's a deadline, not going to move it, can't do it, law won't let us do it. Now they've moved it. They moved it, just extended it for 2 weeks. You know, and all of the catastrophic stories that we have seen, we've gone over on this program, you know, and John Roberts has got to be looking in the mirror saying, I'm responsible for all of that. None of that, none of this chaos, none of this catastrophe, none of these onerous hikes in premiums, these onerous hikes in copays, these onerous hikes in deductibles, none of these canceled policies, none of that would be happening if it wasn't for me. I'm responsible for all of this. You can't blame that on President Obama or this administration. John Roberts got to look in the mirror and said, I did this. This is on me. So I'm hoping that this will be some kind of act of contrition here on his part. All right, Linda, appreciate that. Thank you for that call. Let's grab a call from Sean in Will Point, Texas. Sean, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. I got kind of a hard question I've been trying to deal with for a few weeks now. I believe in life, and I'm against abortion. But one thing that people will point out, if you take it from a Bible standpoint, they will claim that God is the most vicious mass murderer. And if you're pro-life because of the Bible, God isn't, because he killed babies in the flood, he killed babies in Sodom and Gomorrah, he killed David's baby, and he ordered mass genocide, which was killing babies. And I want to know what can you say to people who give you that response? I know it's sin that was the final cause for all that, but they won't take that answer, and I don't know what else to say.
Well, let me ask you this question, Sean. A couple of responses is, do you believe in capital punishment?
I do.
Okay, and why do you believe in capital punishment?
I might be kind of harsh to say it this way, but I feel take out the trash. I don't think anybody who wants to kill, wants to rape, wants to sell poison like drugs all over the place has the right to keep living.
So you believe in capital punishment, and I agree with you. Maybe I'd use different language, but I understand exactly what you're saying. You believe in capital punishment because it's an expression of justice. There are certain sins or certain behaviors or certain acts that are so heinous that the appropriate response is capital punishment. And I would suggest, Sean, that one of the ways that we show the value that we place on human life is through capital punishment. In other words, we say that human life is so sacred to us that if you take a human life without cause, then you will have to forfeit your own life as a result. Now, that's the bottom line explanation for the flood. The flood was an expression of capital punishment on God's part. You use the expression taking out the trash. Well, that's all there was. Part of what you had going into the flood, you go back to Genesis 4, talking about one of the descendants of Adam by the name of Lamech. He says, I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. So what Lamech says, this is the point, we believe in capital punishment as a governmental expression to punish heinous deeds, particularly the taking of innocent human life. So we believe it's merited. Now, Lamech was saying, if a guy looks at me funny, I'm going to take his head off. I'm going to kill him. If he wounds me, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to take my vengeance 77-fold. And this is what happened by the time you got to the flood. This is what the scripture says about human nature because of where it was headed, because of what we see with Lamech. He wasn't the only one. This was now culture-wide. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every utterance or every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually, only evil all the time. So that's what the flood was, Sean. It was God taking out the trash. It was God. It was a mass application of the doctrine of capital punishment. When there is so much violence, so much shedding of innocent blood, it has to be avenged, it has to be judged, and God is the judge of all the earth, so he had every right to exercise capital punishment on a grand scale. Back after the news.